He was so close to the president that people almost thought he was a clone. Well, maybe not. Short, wiry, Greek-swarthy George Stephanopoulos was about a foot shorter than Clinton and 100 pounds lighter. But he thought like Clinton. He shared the same politics as Bill Clinton, the same ambitious agenda as Bill Clinton. In fact, staffers and lobbyists and congressional aides knew that if they wanted to find out what the president was thinking, they could just call up George. In his memoirs, All Too Human, Stephanopoulos describes how back in 1991, he got linked up with the governor from Arkansas, Bill Clinton. At first, he was just a hired gun, a paid professional political operative. But as he watched Clinton campaign, watched him connect with poor people, watched him work a room for votes, he found himself getting converted. How it happened is still a mystery to me, he writes, but I was on the road to becoming a true believer, developing an apostle's love for Clinton and the adventure we were about to share. And then, for several hundred pages, he describes what it was like to serve the president. What was it like to be in the White House, to have an office right next to the Oval Office? I don't have time to be lonely, he admits, with work consuming 12, 14, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, and several hours on Sunday. Every day was a dozen meetings, 100 phone calls, a new crisis. And through it all, he got ever and even closer to the brain of Bill Clinton. He was the chief executive's alter ego. He knew the man's rhythms, his idiosyncrasies. He could withstand Clinton's famous purple rages, his tantrums, and still come up ticking. But after the 1996 elections, Stephanopoulos had to get out. He was just too tired, too exhausted, too burned out. In fact, he was seeing a therapist trying to get his life back under control. And the only way to regain his sanity was to escape the White House. He began seeing him along with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts on ABC's Sunday morning political talk show. He was a guest lecturer at Columbia. He began to work on his book, but he still enjoyed dropping in at the White House and gossiping with Paul Begala, Rahm Emanuel, and James Carville. And then Monica Lewinsky. Now, in his heart of hearts, Stephanopoulos knew Clinton was guilty. He knew he was lying. As much as he wanted to be loyal, to be a defender, it would be dishonest of him. Plus, he was now an employee of ABC and Newsweek. They weren't paying him to be loyal. They were paying him to tell the truth, to report the facts, to be objective. And so when his fellow journalists asked him his opinion, he told them. He admitted his deep doubts. He was even willing to use the I word, impeachment. Which brings me to this title of this series, Nowhere Man. George Stephanopoulos' old friends in the inner circle of the White House were screaming at him to cut them some slack, to stick up for his former boss. Clinton made you, they raged. Talk about betrayal. They were calling on him to rally around the flag once more, and he wasn't with them. Here's how he describes it in his book. I wasn't there to answer the call. I refused to vouch for Clinton's credibility. And I couldn't buy the party line that this was more about Clinton's accusers than his own actions, which meant I was the enemy now. That's the way it was with the Clintons. You were either for them or against them. I knew what being under siege was like, so I couldn't entirely blame them for feeling that way. Well, revenge was quick in coming. Here's the rest of the story, and I'm quoting from the book. But the first signs of my ostracism were disconcerting and painful. In early February, on the eve of a White House party to celebrate the 5th anniversary of Clinton's economic speech, I received a flurry of phone calls from Paul and Rahm to make sure I didn't accept the invitation mistakenly sent by the social office. They didn't want to risk a scene. I heard that as far as Clinton was concerned, I was now a non-person. My name was not to be mentioned in his presence. That must be a tough reality, to know that the President of the United States of America has said to his advisors, I don't ever want to hear his name again. George Stephanopoulos. That guy is not a person. He doesn't exist. I don't want to see pictures of him. I don't want to get phone calls from him. If he's on TV, you change the channel and you change it like right now. George Stephanopoulos is gone. Persona non grata, a non-person. And this is the president wiping you off the map. That is scary. And I don't tell this story to pick on Mr. Clinton. This kind of human erasing has been going on among kings and presidents and speakers of the House for all time. Take that guy off the list. He's always been a White House weapon. Cut him off. No more access. He's been a revenge tool against pushy journalists ever since the invention of the printing press. That's not something Bill and Hillary thought up. You know, the Bible has something to say about the nowhere man and the nowhere woman, the nowhere kid, hurting people whose lives have been stripped of identity, either because they were born into insignificance or because they stepped into the propeller blades of some powerful person's rage. They've been told for so long a time, you're nobody, nada. You count for zip around here. There's a poignant verse found back here in the Old Testament, written by the prophet Isaiah. Here's his metaphorical question. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? That's chapter 49, verse 15. And we know that the answer is yes. Can a mother leave her child on the doorstep of a church? Yes. Can a mother abandon her child while she smokes crack cocaine? Yes. Can a girl and her prom night boyfriend deliver a baby between dances, toss its lifeless body in a trash dumpster, and return to the party? Yes. All around us, this world, there are kids or grown-ups who once were kids who have to say, Mom considered me to be nothing. I was expendable. I was not worth keeping. Mom wanted cable TV and a new Range Rover, but she didn't want me. And maybe that's been you. I got a lot of mail in my radio TV ministry from people on the nowhere man end of the spectrum. Notes came in from someone who admits in a painful pencil scrawl, I'm nobody. Everybody tells me so. We got one, and this is word for word. I'm not concocting one syllable of this. I can't give very much. I have not been successful in my life. I just do odd jobs here and there. My whole life has been failure, sickness, pain, and rejection. I have a hard time being around people for too long. My nerves can't handle it. I am 59 years old and still living with my mother. Because of what happened in the past, I live in fear, anger, bitterness, and bad thoughts. So George Stephanopoulos isn't the only person to have it drummed into their brain, you're nothing. You're off the map. This letter writer looks around at the successes of others, the happy marriages of others, the camaraderie being enjoyed by others, and everywhere they turn, every party they look at from the other side of the fence, they see a big fat zero staring at them. Go away. You're not a person. We don't even want you in our living room. Even Mom is just putting up with his 59-year-old nowhere man. Well, maybe that's you. And maybe not. But right here in God's Word to us is some news which isn't metaphor and isn't just Bible rhyme, but something which is real. Now, here's that same Bible passage, but this time I'll do the courtesy of including the entire verse and not cutting off halfway through Isaiah 49, 15, and 16. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I've engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are ever before me. And I know the temptation. We write this off because it's God. People down here are real. Their put-downs and rejection letters reverberate in our hearts. And God seems unreal by comparison. He's invisible, first of all, and just too high up. We can't relate to it or take it seriously. But this is the challenge. The President of the United States is a real person. If he cuts you off or draws you in, those actions are real. However, if you even believe in God, then you've got to accept it as truth. If he says to you, I do know you, I do love you, I do remember you. I like how the Clear Word Bible paraphrase by Dr. Jack Blanco interprets that last line in Isaiah's promise. You are always in my thoughts, God says. How can I forget you? If the Bible is true at all, then friend, you are not a nowhere person. At this very moment, you have an identity with God. He knows your name and your number. He knows every single thing about you and loves you with an indescribable intensity. With that in mind, does it really matter if some suit in the Oval Office tries to cut you off?